Hey guys, it is me, RegretfulTurtle, and I am back with another video, and we have hit 321 subscribers. Thank you very much, and now let's get started with the video. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Boolean operations, and the Boolean operations I'm talking about are the 5 operations up here on the upper right hand corner of the screen where you can see my mouse. And the ones we're going to be talking about are add, subtract, intersect, XOR, and divide. Okay, so we have a few shapes here that we're going to use to test out these features. And what we're going to do is go ahead and grab this rectangle and this circle and bring them closer together like this. And the first operation that we're going to talk about is addition, add. So hold shift and select both your objects. And what add will do is it'll just merge both shapes together just like that. And then using 2 different shapes, you create a whole new shape, which is pretty cool if I do say so myself. Okay, so now let's undo what we just did and move on to the next operation, which is going to be subtract. And what subtract does, it will get rid of this intersecting piece, as you can see, on the bottom object. So in this case, the bottom object is going to be the rectangle, because if you could see on the right hand side of my screen where the layers is at, the rectangle is underneath the circle. So that's why it is the bottom object. And so if we hit subtract, boom, bada beam, and it gets rid of that intersection piece and it gets rid of the rest of the circle. And now you have a whole new object, which is pretty cool. If you make like eyes and stuff, it's a pretty good way to do that. So now let's hit Control Z to undo our operations. And another cool little trick with the subtract operation is that if you have both of your shapes selected and you hold Alt and you hit the ellipse, see how you kind of see this outer dark blue ring on the circle? So now what this does, instead of subtracting the intersecting piece and off of the square, it's gonna do the subtraction on the circle instead without having to actually physically move your layers. So now let's hit subtract, and boom, it gets rid of it from the circle and gets rid of the rest of the square. So that's a pretty cool little trick if you don't want to be moving around your layers. Alright, so the next operation that we're going to move on to is the intersect. So what the intersect does is wherever your shapes are intersecting or overlapping, it's gonna keep that intersecting piece or that overlapped piece. So in this case, it's gonna keep this piece right here. And so let's go ahead and do that. Boom, and it keeps that piece and gets rid of the scraps that we don't need, which is pretty cool. Moving on to the next operation is the XOR. The XOR is pretty much the exact opposite of the intersect operation. So that intersecting piece is gonna be taken out and the rest of the shapes are going to be left behind. Instead of leaving the intersecting piece behind, it's going to actually just pull it out and create a whole new shape. So let's use that. And so as you can see, it creates a whole new shape and gets rid of that intersecting piece. So now there's a big old gap in the middle. So that's pretty cool, and that's going to be, I've never personally used that operation very much, but it probably has its use cases that you guys will probably be able to find. So the last operation is divide. Okay, so what divide does, it splits all the pieces apart without actually getting rid of any pieces. So what's going to happen here is this outer piece of the square where it cuts, where the circle is on top of, it's going to be its own shape. The intersection is going to be its own shape, and then the rest of the circle will be its own shape as well. So let's hit divide, and as you can see, boom, like I said, its own shape. Boom, the middle is its own shape, and the other side of the square is its own shape, which is pretty legit. And so just one thing to be aware of is when you are using these operations, it is a destructive edit. So what that means is that your shapes will be permanently altered, and in order to get them back, you either have to have a copy or hit Control Z to undo your changes. But one way that you could actually edit these without being permanently edited, I guess, or permanently destroyed, is if you hold Alt right before you do any operation. So you hit Add. If you could see on the Layers tab, you see this compound layer now. So what that means is that it created a shape without actually destroying the original shapes. So if you hit on this down little arrow right here, boom, you still have your eclipse. And as you can see, if you click on that layer, you actually just it's its own shape still, which is pretty cool. Same thing with the rectangle, it's its own shape. So if you could select it and you can move it apart, and look at that, you still have your two original shapes, and you can always merge them together. And if you do that, it's gonna go ahead and kind of just make its own little shape as well. So that's the pretty cool part of holding Alt and right before you select any operation. It creates an object that is not permanently destroyed. Well, that's about it for this video, and hopefully you guys found it useful. So just please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.